Hello and welcome to this live stream on access control. This is the 6th episode in our Headless PIM live stream series. My name is Bård and I have with me Vasil, as usual, let's say, which is lead frontend here at Crystallize.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to join board again.
And as I said, the topic today is access controls. In Crystallize, we are controlling access with roles. We will look at how we can basically define roles, how we can assign it, and of course, what you can do with roles. And to me, access control is not so much about not allowing certain users to do something. It is more towards ensuring that you don't do errors, blocking fields that shouldn't be changed, things like this, making sure that you only work on the products you should. And also, which is maybe even more important, is to optimize the editorial experience so that you can have a smoother or easier editorial experience by actually tuning how the interface basically looks. And so we'll dive into that, and we will talk about two types of restrictions. It's API restrictions, as Crystallize is headless. There is access controls on some of the APIs. I say some of the APIs because it's different APIs are treated differently. And we have also a concept that we call UI preferences, which is essentially permissions and configurations of how the user interface looks and behaves. But Vasil, should we just dive into it and take a look at how we can create a role?
Yeah, let's do that. Cool. Let me just set the scene first. So what you see here on my screen is a tenant that we defined here in Crystallize, and then my current role is a tenant admin for this tenant. And then here on my other tab, which is Chrome Canary, I have a different user which currently doesn't have access to this tenant that my tenant admin user has access. So what I suggest here first, I'll go back to the user to a tenant where I'm tenant admin, and we create a role. To do that, here we need to navigate to the settings panel, and here very at the top we have the roles section. As you can see, currently we have just the tenant admin role, and this is a predefined role that every tenant has because the person usually who creates the tenant is the tenant admin. Of course, we can assign tenant admin role to more users. Cool. To create our role, we click here at the top, and then these are all the different resources to which we can apply different restrictions or permissions. And when we were developing this, we thought like the kind of the conventional role settings UI usually is quite boring with a lot of different checkboxes and kind of tables with different rows, and it's kind of very easy to get lost in those. So when we were developing this, we thought like, let's try to gamify this this interface, right? So to be kind of a bit more pleasant to work with. And that's actually what we try to do here, which I'll demo in a second.
And the example here is maybe for those that are gaming, what do you call it? Skill trees, or that kind of settings in games is kind of what inspired this. Gives you an overview, makes it quick to use.
Yeah, exactly. Great. So let's create here a role which is called category manager. And to start with, I will just create a plain role without any permissions, let's say. Let's see how that's going to work. So this is my category manager role. And the way that we can assign this role to a user is by going back to the settings, and here we have the users. And here I want to invite a new user. And when we are inviting a user, we have the option to actually choose with which role the user should join our tenant. So let's assign this role. Let's create an invite link with this category manager. So I'll go ahead, and this is the invite link. So I'll just copy it. And I'll go back to my other user that I have here in the other browser. So I'll just paste the URL. And as you can see here, really, we joined the tenants. Since the row doesn't have any permissions, you here on the sidebar, we don't have any of the items. And here under the settings, we have just like the basic information that each user has about the tenants and about the account and so on. Cool. Should we maybe dive in a little bit of actually how we can modify this row and see how that's going to be reflected?
Let's make it usable as a category manager.
Yeah. Great. So this is our row. So let's start maybe with so if the row is a category manager, then most probably the row will work with items and shapes, right? Defining what should be the shape for the items in the person is responsible for. So let's start by adding a shape. Even if I don't add the read property here, when I click create or update, this will be pre-selected immediately, because in order to create or update something, you should be able to see it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, that if you hit the big diamond, that's read access to that concern in Crystallize. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll update this row, and then I'll go back to my user. So when I here navigate to settings, you see here now the shapes popped, and actually I can create a new product, let's say, and that's going to be just a plant, let's say, with name and description. And I'll create the shape. Cool. So now maybe let's go back and give some additional permissions to this category manager. Like, what do you think, Bort? We should allow the.
Yeah, so I think now you showed shape because that's important to be able to lock down. I would say typically a category manager, you don't work with the shapes, but as an example, I think it's good. So I think the catalog, that's the most important, and maybe start with, creating, publishing, updating permissions. I think that's maybe the most important.
Yeah. Okay. So here is the catalog tree, and then when we select the catalog read permission, we need to agree to give some additional permissions to the user. This is mainly because the catalog or the items are a complex structure that is composed of a lot of different small items. For example, each item is built on top of a shape, and each item has language, and the items has access to the assets. So this here is the prompt just kind of telling us that we need to give these additional permissions to the user. Cool. And then I'll start with publish and then publish, as you said. I'll update this. So when we go back over here, we see now that actually the user has full access to the catalog to read the catalog, right? So I'll go here to the product plans, for example, and click on the first one. So as you can see here, the publish button is available because the user has permissions to actually publish, and the unpublish is here as well.
Yeah. And of course, you normally would also add editing and maybe creation permissions, right?
Yeah.
But in some cases, it could be like an approval publish, right? So things are created, put in a flow, and then one person can just publish it. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. So maybe now let's look at actually the create permissions as you suggested and give it to the user. So here again, we have a small dependency on the task group, mainly for products. So we need to agree on giving that permission as well. Okay, so when we come over here, what we're gonna see actually is that we now have access to the create button here at the bottom. So now we can click and create a product, for example. Should we talk about a little bit how we can actually manage the shapes here, Bort, and then adjust them to the needs that the user, the row may have?
Yeah, I think so, because now you can create a plant or a product.
Yeah. Okay, so this is tapping a little bit into what Bort mentioned earlier about the UI interface settings or UI preferences. This is a way that we defined a way that we can change the way that the UI looks, so it can be adjusted and fit exactly to the needs of the role. just an example here. For example, if the category manager row needs to work only with the product shape, we don't need to show really the plant shape. So we can hide it from this list or move it like somewhere back, like as a last resort or something to that extent, right? Adjust the look of the UI to the way that is going to be the most comfortable for the user to use it. How can we do that? Here on the shapes, I'll go back to the interface settings for setting the row. And on the shapes, we have here the option for UI preferences. And as you can see, these are all the shapes that we have defined in this tenant. And really, our products here are just the plant and the product shape. So what we can do here, we can actually reorder them and put the product to be first. So I will update this. When I go back, you see now actually that the product shape appears first in the list. Or even
of course, here when you just have two shapes, it's not a big deal. But you might have 20. We have clients that have 30 plus, right? And then you typically only work with a limited subset of the shapes on a daily basis.
Yeah. And then we can just put them in the order that we want them, or even we can hide them here. For example, I'm going to hide here the plant's shape. So when I update, you see now it just disappears. So we can really focus only on the shapes that this row is going to use. Cool. I think that was around creation. Should we then look a little bit more into actually updating the item and different access control? That's cool. So as you can see here, we have a few different folders, and let's say that our category manager should work only with the products folder. Like the other two folders are a responsibility of a different row, and the user probably should even not see them because they are not something that the user is really concerned.
Yeah, or even a subfolder there in the products folder, right?
Yeah, or we can just say that we want to limit to this subfolder, which is just the plants, for example.
Yeah.
So let's see how we can do that. I'll go back to the row creation, and here we have the tree permission or the catalog permission. And here we have a separate section which is called conditional access. And this is what Bort mentioned in the beginning, that the conditional access are actually these restrictions that also apply on the API side and in the UI side. So then, so it's a different type of control access, right? And what we can do here, we can, let's give also update permission to this row. Here we can define a conditional access. And here we have a few options. For example, if we have multiple languages, we can just say that this row is going to be able to read, create, update, delete, publish in specific language and read only in a different language. This is just an example. Here we have just one language, so it doesn't make much sense. But what it makes sense here, for example, is the catalog, right? So we can open the catalog here on the site, and then we can say that I want to go into the products and I want to give the user access just to this plants folder. So I will create this, and you see here that the conditional access appeared that says for all languages, the item that the user has access are just the plants.
Nice.
So update this. So when I go back, you see now that the catalog.
Yeah.
First thing is that the catalog I can change actually that says this is permission restricted catalog. So it's not really the full catalog as used to be anymore. So now we see just the folder to which we have access.
Yeah.
And these are our items.
And this is also a good example. For example, if you have, let's say, third parties that you want to give access, like a manufacturer of certain products, that they can go in and maybe not create, but enrich products, so they can come with the specification and the images, etc. But they shouldn't see any of the other vendors, so they just see the plants, or maybe that would be a brand folder at that point. But yeah, so it's a very usable example. That
yeah, let's maybe do that, and then let's give this user just access to the brands folder, so the user can just read the brands folder, but we won't be allowed to really edit it. And we can do that very easily here. So we are under the catalog tree permissions. And here I want a new condition. This time I want this condition to be just for read. And we will say that here we want the brands folder. I'll add that, and then I will update. So when I go back, you see now here the brands folder appeared. And here, when I click on any of the items, we see that we cannot really edit anything, and the publish button here at the top is disabled as well. Yeah, great. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit more of actually what we can do once we have access to an item, and when we look at the components. What do you think the board is going to help actually, let's say, editorial person to actually work with this content?
Yeah, so as if you and I were to work on a store together, I think we would work on different types of data. Maybe I would work on SEO, getting tips from the Boisha on how to really write the best SEO content, while you would be working on maybe the storytelling and the pricing. So we would have different focus, right?
Yeah. Okay, so let's say that we want to adjust this row the way that it fits my needs because I'm configuring it. Cool. So how can we get this really the story component and put it like here at the very top, because this is the one component that I'm going to be using.
Yeah.
We can do that easily here in when we're setting the row, right? To do that, we need to go back to the shapes and the UI preferences, and the row, the components, the item that we were looking actually is of a shape product, right? So I'll click on the product shape, and here we are getting additional information about like what are the shapes, what are the components that go into that shape, and then we see all of them defined over here. So if I want to adjust this row to my needs, I can say that I want the story component actually to appear first in the list, and I'll just update. So when I go back, you see now, boom, the story component immediately popped first at the top, kind of making it suit my needs, right? And then the rest will follow.
This is nice, and it might be that maybe some of the master data for this or these type of products would actually come from an ERP. That's not uncommon that the base data is created in an ERP first, and then, for example, the SKU needs to match, and maybe you want to, let's say, don't change the name because it needs to be, I don't know what's specified in the ERP. So I guess that's the next step.
Yeah, that's also I'm going to show, but before that's kind of talking a little bit more about the components. As you said, if some of the data comes from ERP and in that updates kind of a master data that updates, like let's say the CEO component or care information, right? What we can do, we can either hide it completely from the UI if it has some sensitive data or anything, or we can disable it, right? And then I will go and actually disable all three components and then hide the CEO component, right? Let's see how that's going to work. So our date come over here. And here is our story components, again on the top, which I can edit, as you can see. And then below are the rest of the three components, which currently are completely disabled. I don't have access to update them. And the last one, which is the CEO, even it's not here, it's not visible, right? If it has sensitive data, we are just
or if you just want to just show it for the SEO or the marketing team that works on search engine optimization, right? So that you can really focus, and you can still share data, but you don't you can remove things that will just clutter up the UI for certain users. I think that's a really powerful capabilities there.
Cool. Now, kind of taking to the example that you were giving about kind of changing the name and the SKU, these are very, of course, things that we don't want to just play around. What we can do here, we can go to the variant, let's say, and we can disable the editing of the variant name, SKU. Here we have the options for the media and the attributes, and even we can change the variant components. We can do the same, hide them or disable editing.
So, and this is for the media, this is both the images and videos that are natively supported on a product variant. And of course, you can add media components further down on the variant story so that you can play with maybe different types of images. For example, you might have some studio images, some 360 spinning images, things like this, so that you can really both kind of fine grain where you want to put your data, but also who sees it and who actually can edit and work with it.
Yeah, that's true. So let me first maybe show this how it looks. So currently, as you can see here, I can click and change the name. If I want to change the SKU, I can do that as well over here.
Yeah.
When we disable editing of these components, I'll just update. So now when I go back, I cannot really click on the name. I cannot change it, and the SKU, I don't have the option to edit it any longer.
Exactly.
So this is exactly kind of locking this information, making sure that the people who work with it, they will not mess up with this sensitive information that eventually could cause a lot of troubles.
An important thing to mention here is also if you have validation on some components, like a field needs to be filled in with minimum 70 characters, something like that. And if it's hidden, the validation will still kick in, so that you need to set up roles that are sensible, because in practice you would be able to create access control that where a user has or basically have permission to publish, but can't due to, let's say, a hidden field that needs to validate, right? So you need to set it up so that it makes sense. But that might be a very valuable thing, especially if you're using a flow for the content creation process, so that you have a SEO flow you can't publish before that's filled in, and that can only be used by or enriched by a certain team, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Great.
That's nice.
How
What's
about
next?
prices?
Sorry?
How about prices? What do you think? Should we?
Exactly. My thoughts exactly, because that's another thing where, okay, if it's a single market e-commerce you're running, or you're managing one market, maybe not that relevant, but still maybe the retail price or suggested list price, maybe that comes from the ERP and you can only change sales prices, for example. Or you have multi-market setup where you want to maybe lock down permissions to both view and edit prices for a certain market. So that's kind of what we're diving into, right?
Yeah, exactly. As you see, also quite often we figure out that some of our clients, they have a lot of different price variants, right? And then it becomes also very cluttered and difficult to work with them. So we added option to adjust the UI, so you can also set the prices, the kind of the way that the user should work with them and see them. How we can really manipulate the prices? We need to go to the price variants option here in the raw details. And see, again, we have the UI preferences.
Yeah.
So what we can do here, so as you can see, for example, currently we have prices just for the first three price variants, retail, B2B, and member, and the rest are empty. So maybe we can start by just hiding the other three which are empty, because we really don't need them. And here we use the same pattern for hiding and disabling, right? So I'll just hide them and update. So when I go back, the prices are now gone. From here, we can say that the B2B price actually is the most important, and we want the user to first see that price. And we can just reorder it from here. When we update, the B2B price is first. And now let's say I want to disable actually the other two, because I want the user to just be able to work with the B2B price, but see still the retail and the member.
And here you have exactly an example where the retail price can be updated, for example, via the API, but you don't want users to change that. You just want them to work on this B2B price. So it's brilliant, and it's kind of exactly the same concepts as we have on the components, right? It's just on a different property here. Yeah.
Exactly. So the kind of the way that we set the UI preferences are pretty much the same everywhere, right? Where we can reorder, hide, and disable editing.
That's nice, and as you see, there's a lot of things we can do with the permissions. Very easy to configure, I must say. Big kudos to the design team for coming up with that. And what we looked at is basically you can lock down attributes and components, price variants, choosing if they're editable, just read only, or not visible at all. Very powerful, both to apply permissions, but also maybe even more powerful in a sense that you can tailor make the user experience for me as an editor. With the reorganization that we looked at is kind of the same, where you can actually move things according to where it makes sense for that particular editor, and at the same time you can also lock down certain area of the catalog so that you get a cleaner catalog, maybe just a couple of folders, which is the folders where you as a category manager works. Okay, I think that's a wrap up of the access control in Crystallize. Check it out, play with it, and let us know what you think. Join our Slack channel if you want to discuss with the team. And thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel since you watched all the way to the end. We will have a new episode coming. It will not be next week because we are organizing a conference, React Norway, and we also have our partner conference called the Product Universe next week. So make sure that you are subscribed so you get a notification when the next episode comes out, where we will focus on data quality and governance, validation and workflows, in other words. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you at React Norway.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.